This is the Business Owners IT Podcast with Anthony Garish and Ryan Carter, where tomorrow's technology meets today's conversations.
Hi, I'm Tony Garish.
And I'm Ryan Carter, and this is the Business Owners IT Podcast.
A podcast where we discuss tips, tricks, and solutions for business owners involving all things tech.
Well, let's dive right into the weekly review. Now, this one I'm going to call a weekly review that's more news for us. So I'm going to ask you what this means here in a minute. And I'm just going to start with, we're starting to talk to some of our clients, and they need certain things, especially the accountants. They need what's called a WISP. And we're finding that they're going to these websites that give it to them for free, and they get the WISP from them, but then they don't do anything about it. So, Tony, I'm going to give it to you on telling us what a WISP is and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so, what's happening is this goes back to the FTC safeguards, which was in June of, I think, last year. People had to be aligned with the, there's some safeguards that they're putting out for like car dealerships and for accountants and anybody in finance, right? So WISP stands for Written Information Security Program, or, policy. It's a program is what they say, but it's a policy is what it is, right? And, everybody's, people are telling, IT guys like us, right? They're telling their customers that they're in this industry and they need a WISP. And again, and also there's flow down in the WISP, right? So flow down for the FTC safeguards for sure. So we have customers coming to us saying, hey, our biggest customer said, hey, they're not going to do business with us unless we align with the FTC safeguards, which, one of the first things in there is you need a written information security program. So what we're seeing, and this just recently happened, is, one of my clients, I emailed him a couple things, and I said, hey, you should probably have a WISP. He says, oh, I got a WISP, and he didn't get it for free. He paid for it. But it comes down to is you have this WISP, you have a written program or policy. Are you aligned to it?
Right.
Are you aligned to that WISP? If we go into court and we sit down and they ask you, do you have a WISP?
Oh, yes, I do, Tony.
Yes, you do. Okay, so you say you have, you tell them, yeah, I have a WISP. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to drill you to prove that you're aligned to that WISP.
Yeah, and just a few examples, and I'm going to do it on our side of it, which is the cybersecurity or network side. Do you have a network protection policy? Well, yes, it's in my WISP. But do you have firewall protection, operating system patching? Are you able to prove any of this to me in court or to that person in court of what you're doing? And that's where the problem lies, is people are going up and signing up, and you can get it for free, buy one for $99, whatever, but they're not taking the next step and doing what's actually inside of it.
Right. So, so you have this program that's written, right? Now you need to have the ability to show that you align to it, and that's the word, align to it. And if you don't align to it, then you can have it as an acceptable risk because maybe it costs too much or maybe it's something, but at least you said, you've identified, hey, I don't align to this. We're working on it. We have this, procedure or project and plan to get it done by the end of the year. Yeah. But, we use a software called Compliancy Manager to help people align with the written information security program. And then it actually prints out the program for us with all of the supporting information, right?
Yeah.
So, you can't have these, you can't just say you have one and not align to it. It's just the same thing like the IRS, right? You can fill out your whole tax return, right? But you better have all the supporting document behind it when it comes time to prove that, oh yeah, I had all these write-offs. Here's the document, right? I did all this traveling. Here's the stuff. So it's the same way with these programs that they're having, is you got to have the supporting document. If you don't, then all you have is a piece of paper.
Yeah, and it may get expensive to do some of the stuff that it's asking for, but just like you said, you don't have to do it ahead of time. They have what's called like a plan of action and milestones. Right. And as long as you have that filled out stating that by 2025, I'm going to make sure this is taken care of or this is done by this date, then, it's not okay, but it's okay to start working towards it.
Yeah, and that's what happens, right? That's what happens is you start to go down this thing with any framework. Okay, we align with the CIS framework. That's what we're striving to align with, and we're constantly improving that, right? But with any framework, we have to have the ability to prove that we're actually doing it. And it goes into the same fact that like with the insurance, right? We're getting all of these cybersecurity insurance questionnaires all the time. Hey, could you fill this out for us? We know what they want the answer to be, right? And it's the same thing. If you answer the answer that they want, you better have the supporting document to back it up when you get in court because you had a cybersecurity incident and you said, yes, I do this. I have two-factor authentication on everything, right? When you say you have two-factor authentication, that's what they're saying, right? I have it on everything. No, not just I have it on one thing or I have it on two things. No, I have it on everything, right? And what does that mean? Does it mean just my Microsoft 365? Does that mean my computers? Does that mean just my bank accounts? They don't say, hey, you have to have two-factor authentication on this, and this, right?
Mm-hmm.
No. Basically, you said you had two-factor authentication. When you get into court, they're going to say, well, you said you had two-factor authentication, but you didn't have it.
Yeah, and you don't want to be caught with egg on your face, either A, in court or B, during an insurance.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get help and you can't get that help because you technically didn't check the right box, that's trouble.
Right.
I do have to ask you, because we were talking about this when I was driving up yesterday or today, I can't remember. But how long does it take you to fill out one of these forms?
The which one? The compliance manager or insurance thing?
Let's go with the insurance one.
Yeah, so the insurance one, in our case, right, when we fill this out for the customer, in our case, we always verify every single question. So if the question's on there, do you have two-factor authentication? And it's not specified, do you have two-factor authentication on your Microsoft 365 tenant? Or do you have two-factor authentication for your administrator accounts? Or do you have two-factor authentication to get into your computer? If it's not specified, then even if you have it on your Microsoft 365, it's no.
Right.
And then we put the reason why no. Because, yes, we have then we usually put in there, yes, we have two-factor authentication verified on all computers or all Microsoft 365 users because we're using conditional access and you cannot not do it without it, right? But we don't have two-factor authentication on maybe VPN to our firewall. And that's another one. Two-factor authentication. You got two-factor authentication VPN? No. Oh, well, that's a problem, right? So we verify it. And then what we do is we actually take all the supporting document, right? And I make you guys, and now you make them, right? The people that are doing it. We have to send that documentation to the ticket. So if we end up in court, we can prove, hey, at this time, this is it. Right? This is what we had. At this time, here's all the documentation that supports this questionnaire around, from an insurance company.
Yep.
Because what they're trying to do is not pay. And answering a question wrong, they're not paying.
We've talked about this in previous podcasts. I've had that happen with a few clients. So yes.
Yeah, we've had it happen where, they just answered it and then we look at it and say, well, you don't have this. You don't have that. You don't have this. I mean, another one that comes up to me too, like with the WISP and the FTC safeguards, is continuous monitoring of everything, event logs and all that. I mean, most businesses don't have that. They don't have a way to collect all those logs, but it says in their program, we have continuous monitoring of everything.
Yeah.
And then they have Microsoft 365 business basic licenses, right? Which doesn't come with any of the...
No, you're not getting any logging.
You're not getting any logging, right? Or they have the cheapest Gmail, right? You're not getting any logging. Another one is identity, right? So I've seen that too, where it says you have to have identity management. What does that mean? That means you need to know who's logging into that computer.
Yep.
Right? So, you get a 2-person or 3-person accounting firm. Everything's on the internet, all in the portals, and boom, they don't have a Active Directory, or they're not hooked to Azure Active Directory, which is basically identity management, right? But they say they align to it. So the bottom line is you're better off saying you don't have the program than saying you do have a program and not following.
Right. Exactly.
So
I just got our 5-minute mark, but I'm actually going to stretch this just a little bit longer,
Sure.
okay? Because, I wanted to bring up something that you and Alex had talked about in one of our previous podcasts. And that obviously you were talking about aligning with frameworks, and then you were talking about the importance of backups. Mm-hmm. And then the big part about the backups is before that you stated that more important in this CIS framework is that the first thing they ask about is who's using your computers and what computers do you have. And that, again, I have to stress that that's important to know, because at that point, you know who the important people are too in that company. So when it does come time to restore from them backups, we know where to start, or the person restoring from those backups need to start. And, I wanted to ask you some questions on this, Tony, because we just started doing it for some of our clients, and I think it's really good what we're doing here is actually testing those backups.
Yeah. So here recently, we've been trying to test one, right? I kind of put this in the thing. We've been trying to test a backup once a month. I mean, this is an additional cost for our customers because it's a big process, and we can have a whole nother discussion on backups. But, you should test your backup if especially if you have a good system like a Datto system where you have business continuity and disaster recovery, right? So you should really test your backup. But getting back to your thing, if you look at the CIS framework, and don't quote me on what number it is, but I think backup is like number 11, right? I think it's the 11th, there's 18 groups or whatever, 18 levels of it, 18 levels, 3 groups. So I don't know what they call it. It just slipped my mind, but it's like number 11. I mean, the backup is the first dollar spent, the last dollar used, right? Always, right? But in the case, we just had recently, I talked with a customer that has computers in Mexico and they have computers in Chicago. Just yesterday, it's like, if you have a cybersecurity incident, the first thing I need to know is all this hardware. Where is it at? How did it happen? So I got to know all the computers, and I got to know all the users, and I got to know where they live. Are they at home? Are they at, are there site-to-site VPNs? Are there, are they getting in through, God forbid, go to my PC, you know what I'm saying? Or just direct RDP. So, yeah. And so that's what a WISP is. It just lays out the framework of, how your business runs. And it has to, for accountants and stuff like that, it's supposed to align with the FTC safeguards.
Yeah. And we have our RMM tool, which should have all of their devices in it, right?
Yeah.
So why do we need to put that in a framework if we already know it?
Well, you need to put it in the framework it's to be able to prove it at that point in time, right? You need to know one of the frameworks say, I need to know all my users. I need to know all my computers. I need to know all the software that's installed on those computers.
Yep.
Right? I need to have a disaster recovery plan. I need to have an incident response plan.
Yeah. So we're not just taking screenshots RMM and putting them in there.
Right.
We're actually stating, and that's another thing too about, say, our compliancy manager. I asked you a time frame to get things done, and I skirted away from the compliancy manager because it's a living and breathing thing. It's changing constantly. Your users are changing, your computers are changing, and maybe your backup process changes, and we have to move with those changes and have those policies in place for you.
Yep.
Yeah. So, with that, it brings me, back to our, original discussion about the WISP and then, testing backups. But, it's our tip of the week. And really, I just want to say our tip of the week right now is do what you say, right?
Yes, absolutely. Do what you say.
If you're going to put it in a policy, you're going to buy a policy, do what's in that policy. Make sure you're covering yourself.
Yep, and have it all in one place so when that time comes, let's hope it never comes, but if it does come and something happens, obviously, right, previous podcast, Ryan Carter clicked on some stuff and it was pretty shady. Something happens, at least you have the policy in place and you can say, we're doing what we said we do. Here's the documentation. And then it's not, it's bulletproof.
Yep. Well, Tony, that time has come to say goodbye to our faithful followers.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to the Business IT Owners. Sorry.
Let's do it again. One more time.
Do it again. 1, 2, 3. Thanks everybody for joining us and tuning into the Business Owners IT Podcast. Hope to see you all next week.
See you next week.
Unique Computing Solutions. Your IT challenges solved.